Hello, my friends. D.L. Anderson here. Welcome back to Transformation by Truth podcast as we share the truth concerning these last days and what you must do to save yourself from the violent times that are just ahead. Today's podcast is a word of truth accounting of the end times. The end is coming. The end is near. Today's podcast is entitled End Times 526, The Spiritual Disease of Deception, Part 6, An Intro to Delusion, the Critical Degree of Deception. The podcast objectives are restate why there is no coming back from confusion, analyze the transition from confusion to denial, analyze the violent nature of denial, and analyze the cyclical nature of delusion. Welcome. Now, before we begin today's lesson, I would like to welcome all my beloved brothers and sisters in Yahushua Messiah who have been scattered to the four corners of the earth, who Yahuwah has joined to this ministry for such a time as this. I would also like to welcome anyone who is engaging our podcasts or videos for the first time. We trust you were led by the set apart spirit in finding us. And if you continue to be led, we hope you stay with us, for these are troubling times and an evil day is just ahead. To this end, if you are watching this video on YouTube and you have not subscribed to our channel, click the subscribe button below and you will be alerted whenever we post new videos. Also, if you have any questions at the conclusion of this video, you can ask them using the link in the podcast description below the video player. Last but not least, if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up so YouTube can share it with believers like us. There is no coming back. Shalom, my beloved brothers and sisters, and welcome to day 477 of our exposition of lawlessness. Last week, we completed our analysis of the focal degree of deception. Enter confusion. Now, we analyze confusion at the individual level and at the group level. And in both cases, it became clear that there is no coming back once you cross over into confusion. Here is why. Confusion fixes you on a path of misconceptions and error by increasing the mental activity and noise within your thought dimension. We know this because misconceptions and errors are designed to prevent you from achieving understanding, and confusion seals the deal on this matter. To wit, he drowns out the voice of understanding, which reinforces your misconceptions and the error of your ways. As I say, there is no coming back from this juncture. And whereas the watchmen from generations past would not have made this claim, you must always remember we are living in the last of the last days, and we are almost out of runway. Therefore, if there ever was a day and a time not to be confused, that day is today, and that time is now. Listen to me. Today is the day to have a made up mind that is fortified with the ruach of understanding and discernment. Ergo, we must continue our analysis of deception to see where the path follows from confusion to ensure that we will never go. Let's get started. The only peace they can find. Now, let's begin this discussion with the progression of ignorance and deception. As you can see by the table below, we have identified every degree in this progression save one, that is, the critical degree of deception. Now, as you have learned, disregard leads to misconception, which leads to error, which leads to confusion, which leads to denial. From now, we must answer the question, what does denial lead to? The answer is sure, and we can find it if we consider what we have already learned about denial. Remember, denial is a refusal to admit the truth or reality of something because it is unpleasant or intolerable to the subject. And in many cases, denial can be very hostile. The reason why is sure, and I will offer it to you as an inflection point. Denial contains a defense mechanism in which confrontation with the truth or reality is avoided by denying the existence of the truth or reality. Notwithstanding, Yahuwah seeks a confrontation. He wants you to come face to face with the truth so that you are without excuse at the judgment. Now, I have a question for the audience. How do you think this confrontation will go? Now, if you believe the confrontation will go badly, you're right. And yet, I would offer that in many cases, it will be even worse than that. My dear friends, in many cases, the reaction to truth will be very violent. We know this because denial is an evolution of confusion, and anyone who has been infected with this spiritual virus is already in a heightened emotional state. Here is why. The man or woman who operates in confusion cannot validate their reality because they are confused. Despite this fact, they want to believe that they are saved. They need to believe it. For apart from this belief, there is no validation for their existence. Now, what happens next is very critical and tragic. As such, I will offer it to you as a revelation, which I advise you to bookmark and to share as you are led. Those who fall into this scenario will deceive themselves into validating a reality that they know cannot be validated. To wit, they will accept a reality that they know is not real for the simple but dangerous fact that they have gone too far. Their error is too deep. And because agitation, noise, conflict, and chaos have infiltrated their mind, the adoption of a false reality is the only peace they can find. When you challenge the reality of someone in denial. Now, I can speak to these matters with authority because I have seen it more often than I would have liked. And yet, it was the will of Elohim for me to endure these trials so that his Ruach could give me this knowledge to share with you. My dear friends, hear me carefully as I say, anyone who denies the truth, no matter how hostile they are in their denial, is far beyond the realm of salvation. And this is why the majority will be, to some degree, violent in their denial of truth and reality. Remember, those who operate in denial have created a false reality to validate their existence. Ergo, their existence is tied to a false reality. And this is how men and women lose touch with reality, for it is the only way they can understand their existence, which is beyond understanding because they are operating in confusion. Now, I told you this would happen aforetime, and yet the Ruach is telling me to tell you again, and I trust you will remember. While ignorance causes you to disregard the truth, deception works in the background to change the reality of truth. Ergo, the next time you turn around to see the truth you once ignored, you won't see it, for the reality of truth has been altered. Ergo, the only truth you will see is an ulterior version, modified and falsified by Satan. And the only truth you will know will be his reality. Now, here lies a problem. To wit, those who operate in denial have adopted Satan's reality. This is why the scriptures refer to them as his offspring. For look, listen, it has been written, the darnel are sons of the wicked one, and the enemy who sowed them is the devil. And trust me, when you engage the offspring of the wicked one with truth and reality, it is not going to be a pleasant experience. Remember, disregard is standing by with her foot positioned to open the door to your mind. Ergo, once deception fills your mind and your heart with the 16 deadliest degrees of lawlessness, he doesn't stop there. Remember, deception drives all the other degrees of lawlessness, and some of these are spiritual doozies. My dear friends, please consider insanity, extremism, agitation, anxiety, disturbance, arrogance, cruelty, hostility, wrath, pride, hate, and ego. And ask yourself the following question: what kind of reaction will you get if you challenge the reality of someone who is infected with these spiritual diseases? The answer is sure, and you already know it. Their response will reflect all the spiritual diseases I just listed and more. And regrettably, this will only work to harden their misconceptions, error, and confusion. Now, as bad as this scenario is, the progression of ignorance and deception is not finished. Alas, there is one final degree of deception required to complete the cycle. And after everything you have learned, it should be clear that this degree is delusion. Let's talk about it. The evil seed has been planted in your mind. Now, as it is my custom, I will begin this analysis by providing a definition for delusion to ensure we are considering this degree of lawlessness from a uniform spiritual perspective. By definition, delusion is a fixed false belief that is resistant to reality, reason, truth, and facts. Something a person believes and wants to be true when it is, in fact, not true. Now, considering this definition, it should be very clear how delusion is the critical degree of deception and the final phase in its progression. Not only this, but it confirms what I've been saying all along. To wit, there is a point of no return in your quest. We know this because a delusion is not only a false belief. On the contrary, delusion is a fixed false belief. To wit, it is permanent. It cannot be moved, which is why those who come to be delusional will progress further into the vast expanse of false reality. And if you can't see why this is the case, I'll tell you with the following revelation. This is another one I advise you to bookmark and to share as you are led. Once a man or woman denies the truth due to the working of the spirits of disregard, misconception, error, and confusion, they will need something to replace the truth they resisted. To wit, they will need their own version of truth to support their false reality. And this, my friends, is the purpose of delusion. It is the modified version of truth that serves as the foundation of their false reality. Now, there are countless red flags associated with this development. And yet, for the sake of time, I will only address two. And these two will prove my assertion that there is no recovery from the spirit of delusion. Now, I will begin with Exhibit A, the definition of delusion. My dear friends, delusion is, and I quote, resistant to reality, reason, truth, and facts. That said, how can someone embrace truth and facts if they are resistant to truth and facts? Not only this, but let's not forget the mental makeup of the individual in question. To wit, the individual is already filled with misconceptions and error. And because their mind is filled with confusion, they are void of understanding. As I say, this is the worst red flag of them all. To wit, a confused mind is a tortured mind. For as we are created in the image and likeness of Elohim, our minds are designed to receive understanding and to be enlightened by the truth. Ergo, a mind that exists in a constant state of confusion, defined by excess mental activity, constant chaos, persistent disorder, and increasing levels of noise, is in pure agony and torment you could never imagine. And yet, it is real and it is their reality. Now, this brings us to Exhibit B, which also derives from the definition of delusion. Here again, delusion is, and I quote, something a person believes and wants to be true when it is, in fact, not true. Now, I am quite sure that many of you know where I am going with this. To wit, the delusion that men and women fall into didn't come out of thin air. Au contraire, consider this, my friends, and be advised. When men and women resist the truth, it is because they find some facet of the truth to be unpleasant or intolerable. To wit, they can't handle the truth. And so, what do? Well, I'll tell you, they will give ear to the spirit of deception, who will convince them into believing they can have the best of both worlds. To wit, they can reap the rewards of following the truth and living their life according to the will of Elohim without following the truth and living their life according to the will of Elohim. Now, what happens next is crucial to understand, and it is another revelation I advise you to bookmark and to share as you are led. Even if you don't sign on the dotted line, making a deal with the devil, the evil seed has been planted in your mind, a seed of doubt, as it were. And that evil seed of doubt will attack your faith with the sole intent of replacing what you know is true with what you want to be true. Now, as we were led by the Ruach of Elohim, we stopped this process before it progressed into disobedience. And yet, the majority were not being led. Ergo, a single seed of doubt blossomed into disobedience. Then came contempt, and then came prejudice. No doubt, all of these degrees make it harder for you to avoid the pending state of delusion. But none do more damage than prejudice. Remember, prejudice is the primary enforcer of the Ruach of self. Ergo, when you operate in the spirit of prejudice, you will find it true. The person you are biased to above all others is none other than you. Therefore, once you complete the progression of ignorance and deception, you will have come full circle. To wit, the whole process began with a small measure of delusion and you wanting to believe something was true, even though you knew at that time that it was not true. And after being infected with 24 strongholds of lawlessness, you are now back where you started. Except there is a small catch, a caveat, a matter of fine print you may not have caught. So allow me to spell it out for you. In the beginning, you retained the power of choice, for you knew the truth from the lie. However, once deception completes his progression, the power of choice is lost because A, truth does not exist in the false reality you adopted, and B, the bridge you crossed over when you came to be in delusion is no longer there. It no longer exists. Now, I could continue analyzing the great danger of delusion and how it is indeed a prominent point of no return in our quest. But the Ruach is leading me to table this discussion for now. And he is commanding me to ask you to pray over these matters, for there is much more to say. And thus, we will continue this discussion at the appointed time. And I will see you in 2 days. Now, here is the final word. Deception casts a powerful illusion that will keep you fixed in denial and delusion. Brothers and sisters, hear me carefully as I say, you must appreciate the crucial nature of these matters. For although many within the dying nation of Israel have not crossed over into false reality and delusion, they are all on their way. My dear friends, that is why they are dying. And the only peace they will find is a figment of their fragmented imagination and an illusion of their tortured mind. Heretofore, I recommend, stay away from the path that leads to delusion. Avoid it at all costs, for the one who adopts a false reality is the one who is forever lost. Now, here is today's assignment. Meditate on today's lesson, and if you have any questions, please submit them using the form at pinnacleofholiness.com, and I will respond to you as soon as I can. Now, here is what's next. We completed today's podcast, End Times 526, The Spiritual Disease of Deception, Part 6. And the next podcast is entitled End Times 527, The Spiritual Disease of Deception, Part 7. I will post this podcast on Wednesday, October 22nd, 2025. Until then, my friends, continue to be led by the Spirit of Elohim. Continue to watch, continue to pray, continue in fasting, and most of all, continue to be focused, for the end is coming. The end is near.